Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden and this is my review of Man of Steel #1. So it's finally happened. After quite a bit of build-up and marketing on behalf of DC and a whole lot of speculating on the part of various fans, Bendis has launched his first issue of Superman with this event comic called Man of Steel. I'm sure they're going to get into a more regular thing going forward, but that's how this is advertised. And that's fine, it's a good way to kick things off with Bendis going forward. I really didn't know what to expect, because you really never know what to expect out of Bendis. Anyone who blanketly assumes he's going to be a good or bad writer doesn't really fully understand this man. I can't imagine anybody who only likes or dislikes his comics because the quality and tone and type of comics he writes is all over the place. You just haven't read enough of his work then, because there's no universal statement that can be applied to it. He does rely heavily on dialogue, but I've read silent issues written by the guy that are amazing, and others that feature very minimal dialogue that are excellent too. I've read dialogue-heavy comics written by the guy that are honestly excellent as well, and even if you don't fully appreciate his style, he often writes against his own typical style. So there's no way about it. You don't know what you're going to get out of a Bendis comic until you get it. He's too big and prolific a writer for anything else to be true. That's why I've been short on making broad predictions about this going forward, even when we got a little taste of it in Action Comics #1000, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that taste. And of course this issue starts out with one of the biggest dialogue dumps I've seen in some time, with a page just full of dialogue as that new villain just starts ranting at various primordial entities in the DC universe about how dangerous Krypton is. It's an interesting idea, and the page itself is actually really well done in terms of artwork, and you get all these crazy deep cuts in terms of DC lore that I quite enjoyed. But yes, in typical Bendis form, it is a wall of dialogue presented along with that fantastic artwork, and that did have me a little worried about what I was in for. You know, for all of the criticism that gets thrown Bendis' way about dialogue and stuff, Superman starts his own inner narration, and it's amazing. He thinks about how he perceives the world. He accidentally picks up a song a few hundred feet away and gets caught up in it for a moment. And then he talks about a chorus of screams as a fire suddenly starts in another part of the city. It's a beautiful and wonderful take on Superman in that moment, and instantly proves that Bendis is capable of writing this character well. Then it's followed by a fire, and Superman's doing a Superman thing, saving people in very creative and interesting ways, but nothing out of the park, just in terms of how he goes about the mechanics of it and protects children without injuring them and all of the stuff that a lot of writers don't necessarily think about. It's all so great. Yet in the ruins of the fire, he's suddenly approached by a deputy fire chief something, and it's a weird moment. It's kind of a meet-cute that you'd see in some romantic comedy. She sort of flirts with him, and then he accidentally hears her saying some comment about how handsome he looks as he's flying away because she forgets about his super hearing and then gets all embarrassed about it. That character felt like any other Bendis character written over the last 10 years or so, outside of his really good ones. They all have that same Joss Whedon-y tone to them, where they kind of just make jokes. They don't really have much of a personality beyond these quips, and otherwise can only be identified by their occupation. They're not real characters. So it's a little odd that this character is being introduced as if she's Superman's new love interest. After all, Superman's supposed to be married and with a child. And sure enough, we go to the Daily Planet and Lois is there, yet it's clear these two aren't together, or so it seems, and John is missing in action entirely. We then seem to flash back to the family together when they're suddenly accosted by a flashing light, and the issue ends. It was the one thing I was hoping they wouldn't touch, and it seems like they're getting at Superman's family. One of the best things to come out of DC's Rebirth, and for them to abandon it is a real kick in the teeth. It's okay, Superman doesn't have to have Lois Lane as his love interest, but they were getting so good together that to lose this is a really disappointing moment. We don't know what's going on here, and I'm really curious what Bendis has planned. I didn't really think he'd do this, since a character like Superboy is really in his wheelhouse and the sort of thing he could write well. And this new love interest is just so boring and bland in comparison to Lois. So I don't know what's going on here. The fact that it is a plot point within Man of Steel suggests to me that we're not just abandoning this idea entirely. At least I hope not. But it is concerning, because if this is what they're doing and this is the direction Superman comics are going, well, that's a shame, because I'm honestly probably just gonna wash my hands of the whole thing. Action Comics and the Superman series were fun because they dealt with this family stuff, and it was different from pretty much any other regular Superman series I had ever read. If we're going to go back to the basics, well, already that stuff about Krypton being a danger and this guy supposedly being responsible for the planet's destruction, I've seen and read 100 different stories like that already. I don't need any more of that in my life, and frankly, it sounds like just more of the same when it comes to Superman and related comics that I've read over the years. That's nothing special, and really, it's just going to get into the boring, repetitive stuff that Bendis typically fell into with his other series over at Marvel, back when he was running there for ages and ages. There were some very strong and awesome moments to this comic, but also some real red flags as far as I'm concerned. I'm interested, but skeptical, and I want to see how things play out going forward and how they plan to deal with this whole Superman having a family business. But if they're abandoning it entirely, I'm just kind of done for a while, and I'm just going to have to move on for a bit. It's like Spider-Man and One More Day. You can't really go backwards with the character. It's just not that interesting, unless you want to do a full reboot. And that's conceivably okay, but it feels like we only did that 5 or 6 years ago. Doing it all over again really isn't for me. I'm not interested. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and thanks for watching. If you like Comic Island, be sure to check out our Patreon page in the video description, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.